Chapter 3421, Chapter 495, Bubbling Crystal City of Secrets. Chapter 3421, Chapter 495, Bubbling Crystal City of Secrets. Chapter 495, Bubbling Crystal City of Secrets. What's going on? A player's private property? Isn't this an NPC city's transportation firm? Can players buy such a thing? Crap. Even if this transportation firm is available for purchase, the price shouldn't be low. Which power decided to make such a huge investment? The players who were forcibly teleported out of the secret crystal transportation firm couldn't help but be shocked by the revelation that a player had bought the transportation firm. They had never heard of players being able to purchase an NPC city's transportation firm before, so they never thought it could be done in the Eternal Realm's NPC cities. However, everyone quickly got over their surprise as their attention shifted to wondering which power was behind the secret crystal transportation firm's purchase. It should be known that transportation firms were one of the primary sources of income for players operating in NPC cities. So, taking ownership of a city's transportation firm was no different than controlling the economic lifeline of players in the city. While it might be good news for the power who owned the transportation firm, it was bad news for everyone else as they could potentially be put under heavy restrictions. Of course, such restrictions would have little effect in the current Eternal Realm. With the large influx of Holy Race players, it had become extremely difficult for players to transport merchandise across different maps. This was because the Holy Race players were focused on leveling up and gathering resources in the various maps, so they wouldn't spare the human players they came across. Not to mention, they could earn honor points for killing human players. Currently, the only reason players were willing to take on quests from the transportation firm right now was because Holy Race players and human players were still fighting over the entrance tokens. The Holy Race players did not have the spare energy to venture to other maps, so it wasn't particularly dangerous to trade across maps. However, once this period passed, apart from quests issued by NPC nobles, players were unlikely to take on any quests from a transportation firm. Meanwhile, after purchasing the secret crystal transportation firm, Shifeng quickly reopened the establishment, allowing all players to take on quests. The transportation firms in God's domain earned their revenue through intermediary fees. The firm would charge up to 10% of what players earned from a quest taken from the firm. So, the more players there were doing quests, the more revenue a transportation firm could generate. In the early stages of the Eternal Realm, a transportation firm could earn at least 2 eternal silver from a 20-man quest involving short-distance trading. If an NPC noble had issued the quest, the firm could stand to earn up to 6 eternal silver. Meanwhile, during the early stages of the Crystal City of Secret, the city could gather at least 1 million players. Even with the Holy Race's interference, it should still be possible for the secret crystal transportation firm to see over 1,000 quests being completed each day. In other words, the transportation firm could make at least 30 eternal gold a day, which would help cover a significant portion of the building's weekly management fee and lessen the burden on Shifeng's pockets. Shortly after Shifeng's party of 4 left the city hall, the entire city hall went into an uproar. Many people talked about the news of the secret crystal transportation firm being purchased, and the various powers began frantically looking into who was behind the purchase. Although the secret crystal transportation firm had little constraint on the Crystal City's various powers due to the Holy Race's interference, it was still a form of restriction. If the transportation firm's owner decided to target them, it could still cause them significant trouble, so it was necessary to investigate thoroughly. At the same time, the Crystal City's various powers began to frantically accumulate wealth. This was because the various powers realized that if the Crystal City's transportation firm could be purchased, it went without saying that the city's other industrial buildings could be bought, too. The auction house and airport, in particular, became key targets of the various powers. If anyone managed to control these 2 buildings, it would be no different than if they controlled the entire city. Guild leader Blackflame, isn't it too early to buy the transportation firm now? Desolate Fury asked Shifeng when he saw the various powers players starting to purchase eternal coins at significantly higher prices than before. Had we secretly saved up more money, we could have bought the auction house or airport instead. Either of those buildings would have been much more valuable than the transportation firm. The auction house and airport were places where players were bound to have to spend money in the future. If they could purchase one of these two locations before the various powers learned about the possibility of purchasing industrial buildings, the wealth and influence they could earn would be vastly greater than what they could get from the transportation firm. No, now is the right time to buy it. If we wait any later, buying it'll become very difficult, Shifeng said, chuckling. However, he did not bother explaining further as he led the trio to the underground secret palace. It was true that controlling an NPC city's auction house or airport was no different than controlling the entire city. However, the main god system naturally wouldn't let players take control of these two buildings so easily. At first glance, the auction house and airport might seem like treasure troves, but in the Eternal Realm, they were losing businesses. Even in the early stages of the Crystal City of Secrets, it would cost a minimum of 10,000 eternal gold to purchase either of these two buildings, and the weekly management fee would be over 5,000 eternal gold. To make matters worse, players could only take 5% of the profits generated by the auction house and airport. In other words, players who bought the auction house could only receive 5% of the establishment's revenue, which was generated via processing fees. It was the same case for the airport. Moreover, the fees charged by the auction house and airport were fixed by the system, and the only way players could increase them was by upgrading the buildings using special means. If players could not accomplish that, their only other option was to find ways to increase the city's player population. Essentially, the only reason players would buy the auction house and airport was to have more influence over the city. Meanwhile, this influence would last as long as their financial circumstances allowed it. Currently, in the Crystal City's early stages, the transportation firm was the only building with the opportunity to be upgraded. As for the other industrial buildings, they could not be improved at present. In a situation where the various powers desperately needed money for their development, whoever bought the Crystal City's auction house and airport would be a fool. Crystal City of Secrets, Underground Crystal Palace. In the time that it took for Shifeng to make a round trip to the City Hall, the number of players gathered in the plaza in front of the Underground Crystal Palace's entrance had increased by several times. Meanwhile, teams of 20 or more players formed by the various powers could be seen waiting in line to enter the secret land. Party of 6 looking for one more member. We need a level 150, tier 5 cleric or higher with at least 3 fragmented legendary items. 20-man farming team recruiting 10 more members. Looking for level 150 experts and above. Secret treasures obtained will be auctioned internally. Stay away if you can't afford the entrance fee. Employer team recruiting level 150 plus experts of any class. The employer will cover the entrance fee. If we obtain a secret treasure, every team member will receive 5 eternal gold. Apart from those waiting in line, many players could also be seen looking for teams or forming teams in the plaza. Just as Shifeng was about to join the queue with his party, he suddenly spotted a familiar figure among the crowd in the plaza. Gentle Snow. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3422, Chapter 496, Astonishing Transformation. Chapter 3422, Chapter 496, Astonishing Transformation. Chapter 496, Astonishing Transformation. TL notes, changing transportation firm to trading firm. Underground Crystal Palace, entrance plaza. Clad in white holy armor and carrying 2 great swords, Gentle Snow stood amidst the crowd in the plaza while faint magic patterns circled her body. At first glance, Shifeng nearly failed to recognize her. Compared to when Gentle Snow participated in the city battle, the current Gentle Snow had undergone a massive transformation in terms of levels and combat standards. During the city battle, Gentle Snow only managed to match titled experts of the same tier by relying on her Void Saint legacy. But now, Gentle Snow was not only a level 152, tier 5, Void Saint, but she had also developed her combat standard to the peak of the 4th floor standard. One could say that she was already a pseudo 5th floor expert. So long as she could elevate her control over her body to the extrasensory realm, she would become a true 5th floor expert. Guild leader. Gentle Snow also quickly noticed Shifeng. As soon as Gentle Snow spoke, the noblewoman standing next to her turned to look at Shifeng with a curious gaze. The noblewoman appeared to be on the same team as Gentle Snow, and she wore a set of light blue armor while carrying a silver spear and a shield on her back. "Snow, do you know that person?" the noblewoman asked Gentle Snow after seeing that Chiffon was only a level 145 player. This was a very low level in the Crystal City of Secrets, and it wasn't even comparable to the levels of 4th floor experts. "His guild leader Black Flame, the leader of my guild, Big Sis Chalene," Gentle Snow introduced. Black Flame? The noblewoman named Ink Chalene seemed to recall something when she heard Gentle Snow's introduction. "The luminous glory list's Azura Sword Emperor?" "Yes." Gentle Snow nodded. Then, she suggested, "Big Sis Chalene, our team is currently short of members. Why don't we form a team together and explore the underground Crystal Palace?" Hearing this, Ink Chalene took a glance at Chiffon and his party and pondered for a moment before saying, "They are sufficiently strong, but their levels are a little low. You can invite them, but make sure you let them know that the Scarecrow Fox Adventurer team always allocates loot based on the system's evaluation of individual contributions to the team. If they have no problem with that, we can explore the underground Crystal Palace together." After Ink Chalene finished speaking, a middle-aged male elven cleric on the same team shook his head and said, "Snow, do you really want to invite your guild leader? Scarecrow Fox isn't your average adventure team. We are a prominent force throughout the greater God's domain. Your strength has also improved significantly during the time you have been with us, and your weapons and equipment are leagues better than what you had before. While I don't know how your guild leader got here, as a bottom-ranked luminous glory expert with such a low level, he's going to have a hard time keeping up with our pace." Gentle Snow grew a little hesitant when she heard this. Throughout this period, Gentle Snow came across extraordinary opportunities and made significant leaps in strength. She had also replaced all of her weapons and equipment with significantly better ones. Ink Chalene, a vice commander of the Scarecrow Fox Adventurer team, had even given her the Frost Thunder Dual Blades, which were a set of legendary greatswords. Even then, she was just barely able to keep up with Scarecrow Fox's members and achieve somewhat noticeable contributions. If Chiffong's party couldn't contribute sufficiently to the team, not only would they be wasting their time, but they would also be wasting the expensive entrance fee. Even for level 145 players, it cost 20 Eternal Silver and 50 units of 7 Luminaries Crystal per person to enter the underground Crystal Palace. As for players between levels 150 and 159, the entrance fee was even higher, costing 50 Eternal Silver and 100 units of 7 Luminaries Crystal per person. Currently, the average titled expert operating in the Crystal City of Secrets would be fortunate to even have 10 Eternal Silver in their possession, while the average 5th floor expert would only have around 20 Eternal Silver. Hence, the underground Crystal Palace's entrance fee was a considerable expense for most players. As for Gentle Snow, she was only able to have a little over 90 Eternal Silver in her possession, thanks to Scarecrow Fox's team. If not for the team, she would have never been able to afford to enter the underground Crystal Palace. However, after some hesitation, Gentle Snow still decided to invite Chiffong's party to the team. Although Scarecrow Fox was only an adventure team with few members operating in the Eternal Realm, it was a force to be reckoned with in the greater God's domain. In fact, it was strong enough to compete with the various conglomerates. The Paimon conglomerate was closely eyeing Zero Wing, even to this day. Although Zero Wing currently had Star Lake City's protection, it wasn't a long-term solution. However, if Zero Wing could earn Scarecrow Fox's favor, it was possible the Paimon conglomerate would back off a little out of wariness. Meanwhile, after hearing about Gentle Snow's suggestion, Chiffon readily agreed to it. He had heard about the Scarecrow Fox Adventurer team in his previous life. The Adventurer team's members were incredibly strong, and its 7 commanders were even existences capable of rivaling Tier 6 gods. At its peak, it nearly reached the standard of pseudo-apex powers. If not for the fall of Spear Paradise, Scarecrow Fox's great commander, the Adventurer team might have had a real chance to become a pseudo-apex power. Meanwhile, his goal was to obtain the heroic mark dropped by the level 155 floor master. If the loot was distributed based on individual team contributions, it couldn't get any better for him. Subsequently, Chiffong's party of 4 merged with Scarecrow Fox's team of 12 and joined the line to enter the underground Crystal Palace. While waiting in line, Shifeng listened to Gentle Snow talk about her encounters in God's domain after the city battle, and he couldn't help but be amazed. Apparently, after being abruptly required to log into God's domain, Gentle Snow had also found herself appearing in a special location. It was also at that place where she came across the Scarecrow Fox adventurer team. Meanwhile, when she was in that place, she could not log out of the game, and even the flow of time there was completely different. Even though only several days had passed since the city battle, Gentle Snow stated that she had spent over 2 months in that special location. During this time, she was promoted to Tier 5, and her combat standards also saw massive improvements. Meanwhile, it was only a day ago when she and Scarecrow Fox's team had discovered a teleportation passage that led to the Crystal City of Secrets map. It's only been several days since the city battle. Gentle Snow couldn't help but be in disbelief after hearing Shifeng's account of recent events. In her experience, she had spent a long time in the God's domain, which was an extremely dangerous thing to do since she had logged into the game from a public location. If not for the system preventing her from logging out for another day, she would have gone offline as soon as she arrived in the Crystal City of Secrets. You don't have to worry about safety for now. Star Lake City has arranged for security and protection. There is also an AI robot replenishing your gaming cabin's nutrient solution. So, just wait until the system lets you log out safely, Shifeng said with a smile. Shifeng was already used to seeing certain spaces having different time flows. He was just surprised by how extraordinary Gentle Snow's experiences were whenever she entered spaces with different time flows. While Shifeng and Gentle Snow were chatting, a commotion suddenly occurred in the plaza. A short moment later, the thousands of teams in the plaza could be seen stepping aside for a 20-man team. Even the teams of upper-ranking hegemonic powers and conglomerates did not dare to stand in this 20-man team's way, giving the team unhindered access to the underground Crystal Palace. What's the background of this team? Why are the various powers teams voluntarily making way for it? Can't you see the emblem on their chests? It's the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, a pseudo-apex power. The young man leading the team seems to be Abyss Water, a vice-guild leader of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Rumors say he could already use World Creation's second form at Tier 4. Now that he's at Tier 5, with how young he is, he can probably rival the Apex Power Demon's Gate Starfall Witch. The crowd standing outside the plaza engaged in a heated discussion among themselves when they saw how the teams waiting in line behaved toward the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's team. Meanwhile, amidst everyone's discussion, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's team had already cut the line and arrived in front of Inkchaline, who was first in line. The Scarlet Merchant Alliance is in a hurry, so get lost if you know what's good for you, a level 151 elder of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance yelled at Inkchaline. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3423. Chapter 3423. TL Notes. Changing transportation firm to trading firm. In front of the underground Crystal Palace, Scarecrow Fox's members revealed ugly looks on their faces when they heard the words of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's elder. The Crystal City of Secrets was now a gathering place for many powers, and as far as they were aware, there were at least 4 pseudo-apex powers currently operating in the city. Among them, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance vaguely ranked among the top 2, so it wasn't an existence an adventurer team like Scarecrow Fox could afford to offend. However, the problem was that their team had already paid the entrance fee to enter the underground Crystal Palace. Right now, they were merely waiting for the NPC guards to complete the registration procedures and let them inside. If they left now, they wouldn't get a refund on their entrance fee, and they would have to pay again later. But they didn't have that much money at the moment, and by the time they collected enough to enter the underground Crystal Palace, many of the opportunities available in the secret land would have been taken by others. At this time, River Light, the middle-aged elven cleric standing behind Inkchaline, stepped forward and smiled, saying, "Dear friends of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, I am River Light of the Scarecrow Fox Adventurer team. We have already paid the entrance fee and are only waiting to enter the underground Crystal Palace. Do you mind waiting for the NPC to complete the registration procedures?" As soon as River Light spoke, many of the players present revealed shocked expressions. Scarecrow Fox's River Light. Is he the River Light who entered the Sacred Glory list's top 100 over a decade ago? I have heard of River Light. Back when he was still on the Sacred Glory list, I heard that he was on good terms with an honorary elder of the Pseudo-Apex Power Azure Wave Temple. He even participated in several large-scale crusade quests with the Azure Wave Temple. It's a pity he rose to fame a little too late. Had he been given another 1 or 2 years, he could have most likely fought for a spot among the Sacred Glory list's top 30. Some of the various Powers players started a discussion among themselves when they heard River Light introducing himself. They didn't expect the team currently first in line would have someone of such significant origins in it. As for River Light, the target of the surrounding players' discussion, although he remained calm on the surface, he inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. It was true that he was quite well known in the greater god's domain. If he were only dealing with an upper-ranking hegemonic power, the other party would most likely back off out of respect. However, it wasn't necessarily true for the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Only an existence of a similar caliber, such as the Azure Wave Temple, could get the Scarlet Merchant Alliance to back off. The problem was that he couldn't directly mention the Azure Wave Temple in this situation. Otherwise, the Pseudo-Apex Power would definitely find trouble with him later on. Now that others had brought up the Azure Wave Temple on his behalf, things couldn't be better. Who do you think you are? So what if you have some connection with the Azure Wave Temple? Do you think the Scarlet Merchant Alliance will be afraid of it? The Scarlet Merchant Alliance's elder sneered. Our vice guild leader is standing here right now. Even if that honorary elder you're acquainted with comes here in person, he will still have to step aside for vice guild leader Abyss Water. I'll say this one last time. Get lost. River Light's face turned pale when he heard this, but he didn't dare say anything. And to think that he had only recently told Gentle Snow that Scarecrow Fox was a major power with quite a lot of influence in the greater god's domain. Yet, now, not even an elder from the Scarlet Merchant Alliance was showing Scarecrow Fox any respect. At this time, Inkchaline finally decided to speak up. Friends from the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, although you have significant influence in the Crystal City of Secrets, it won't benefit either of us to fight, don't you think? As soon as Inkchaline finished speaking, the intensity of her aura also began to rise. Like a lioness about to go on a rampage, the aura she exuded intimidated many of the Tier 5 experts nearby, causing them to subconsciously step away from her. Inkchaline might only be a vice commander in Scarecrow Fox, but she was a saint who had climbed to the Sacred Glory list's top 10 over a decade ago. At present, she had even created a complete set of exclusive absolute techniques for herself. Paired with the legendary spear and shield in her possession, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was one of the apex experts of the current Eternal Realm. As soon as Inkchaline expressed her willingness to fight, the members of the Scarecrow Fox present and Gentle Snow also prepared themselves for a fight to the death. For players operating solo or in adventurer teams long-term, they were usually people unafraid of getting into trouble. Not to mention, they were currently in the Eternal Realm, where even apex powers were unable to exhibit their full strength. You want to pick a fight with the Scarlet Merchant Alliance? The Scarlet Merchant Alliance's saint-ranked elder laughed when he saw the behavior of Scarecrow Fox's members. Do you have the qualifications? When the elder finished speaking, 3 old men whose faces were hidden by the black cloaks they wore stepped out from the Scarlet Merchant Alliance team. What? Is the Scarlet Merchant Alliance really planning to fight? If I'm not mistaken, that person is Inkchaline, one of Scarecrow Fox's vice commanders. I heard that if Inkchaline advances to Tier 6, she could absolutely be ranked among the Divine Glory list. Even if the Scarlet Merchant Alliance should have difficulty dealing with her. The spectating crowd couldn't help but be surprised to see the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's strong attitude. While the Scarlet Merchant Alliance was indeed powerful, it still needed to pay attention to experts of Inkchaline's caliber in the Eternal Realm. Not to mention, there were still many powerful experts from Scarecrow Fox standing behind Inkchaline. If the two sides fought, there was no doubt the Scarlet Merchant Alliance would emerge victorious, but this victory would come at a considerable price. Just when everyone was finding this situation strange, the 3 old men removed their black cloaks and revealed their faces. Impossible, Inchcaline fell into a daze when she saw the faces of the three old men. Why are the Demon Cave trio here? The Scarlet Merchant Alliance, as a pseudo-apex power, had been around for a very long time, and many of its old monsters had already retired from the active scene. Of these retired old monsters, some of the more famous ones were the Demon Cave trio, who had risen to fame more than a century ago. The Demon Cave trio were blood-related brothers, each of whom was a saint-ranked expert who had created a set of exclusive absolute techniques for themselves. Under the training of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, they became able to fight as if they were of one mind. On top of that, they possessed a secret technique that allowed them to form a natural battle array that enhanced their basic attributes and let them share their 5 senses. When the Demon Cave trio were still active at Tier 6, they had once successfully killed a Tier 6 god. Later on, they even assassinated many experts capable of killing Tier 6 gods. Although they had failed more times than they had succeeded, it was still a fact that they had succeeded sometimes, and these achievements made the trio famous throughout the greater god's domain. Now that the Demon Cave trio had appeared in the Eternal Realm, even though they were currently only Tier 5 assassins, it would still be a piece of cake for them to annihilate Scarecrow Fox's team. When Gentle Snow saw Inchcaline's reaction to the three old men, even though she personally didn't know who the Demon Cave trio were, she still understood that they were most likely doomed. Although they should currently be safe, considering they were still in the city, it would be a different story once they entered the underground Crystal Palace or left the city. At that time, these three old men could attack them without worry. "I'm sorry, guild leader. I thought we could get some extra help for the guild, but I didn't expect to attract an even stronger enemy," Gentle Snow apologized to Chiffon, her face full of regret. Chapter 497. Do you have the qualifications? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3424, Chapter 498, Who is that guy? Chapter 3424, Chapter 498, Who is that guy? Chapter 498, Who is that guy? Following the revelation of the Demon Cave trio's identities, an uproar occurred outside the underground Crystal Palace's entrance. Now that the Demon Cave trio have made an appearance, Scarecrow Fox's team is doomed. Not only are they doomed now, but they can also forget operating in the Eternal Realm in the future. Coming to the underground Crystal Palace to sightsee today was indeed a good idea. I didn't think I would get to see 3 former Divine Glory List experts in action. Even if they have already retired from the front lines, unless one of those peerless individuals shows up, none of Scarecrow Fox's members should think of escaping the trio's clutches. No wonder the Scarlet Merchant Alliance chose to take such a strong stance. With the Demon Cave trio here, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance can easily label itself the strongest power based in the Crystal City of Secrets. When the spectating players looked at the Demon Cave trio, some were filled with excitement, some sighed helplessly, and some looked at Scarecrow Fox's team with sympathy. At the same time, everyone couldn't help but think that Scarecrow Fox was truly unlucky. The Scarlet Merchant Alliance had many old monsters, but the Demon Cave trio was one of the top few existences that others wished to avoid encountering the most. Even the peerless individuals of Apex Powers would get a headache when targeted by the trio. Currently, Inchcaline was the only person among Scarecrow Fox's team capable of standing up against one of the Demon Cave trio in a one-on-one fight. Even then, it would only be limited to a direct confrontation. As for everyone else, they couldn't even survive against the Demon Cave trio in a direct confrontation. Friends of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, today we of Scarecrow Fox are in the wrong, River Light hurriedly said with a smile. How about this? We will cover your entrance fee as an apology. You have a way with words, the elder of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance said, laughing. Then, he glanced at the alluring Inchcaline and transcendental Gentle Snow and continued, if you want to make amends, fine. We can forget this slight out of respect for your great commander, but you will have to let these 2 beauties accompany Vice President Abyss Water for a few days. Do that, and we will call it a day for today's matter. Don't go too far. Snow is not one of Scarecrow Fox's members, Inchcaline said angrily. Inchcaline had intentions of recruiting Gentle Snow into Scarecrow Fox. Unfortunately, Gentle Snow had turned down her invitation, stating that she had already joined a guild called Zero Wing and did not intend to join any other powers. Hence, Inkchaline decided to bring Gentle Snow along with her team and help her grow, hoping that their time together could change Gentle Snow's mind. After all, Gentle Snow possessed far greater talent than any paragon Inkchaline had met thus far. If Gentle Snow ended up getting humiliated because of Scarecrow Fox's problem, Inkchaline didn't know how she could bring herself to face Gentle Snow in the future, let alone invite Gentle Snow to join Scarecrow Fox. Going too far. Undying Shadow, the eldest of the Demon Cave trio, sneered. We are only allowing you to keep Vice Guild Leader Abyss Water Company out of respect for your great commander. If you still refuse to accept our offer, we'll have no choice but to eliminate you all from the Eternal Realm. It seems you're really set on using us to set an example. Inkchaline narrowed her eyes on Undying Shadow, vaguely understanding what was going on. Scarecrow Fox was an adventurer team capable of rivaling conglomerates in the Greater Gods domain. Under normal circumstances, even though the Scarlet Merchant Alliance had already reached the pseudo-apex power standard, it still wouldn't try to butt heads with Scarecrow Fox for no valid reason. It was especially so in the Eternal Realm. Yet, even though neither side had any big grudges against the other, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance seemed hell-bent on making things difficult for Scarecrow Fox. The only reason Inkchaline could think of was that the Scarlet Merchant Alliance was trying to prove to the various powers and players present that the Scarlet Merchant Alliance was the #1 power in the Crystal City of Secret. Meanwhile, Scarecrow Fox's demise would be the best evidence. If even a conglomerate-level adventurer team like Scarecrow Fox had to submit to the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, what could other powers possibly do? You have 3 seconds to consider, Undying Shadow coldly said. If you refuse, none of you can continue living in the Eternal Realm. We'll have you die once every time you log in. And don't think you can escape our pursuit. Us brothers all have tracking skills, and everyone has already been marked. The mark lasts for 3 days and won't disappear even if you log out. The duration will only reduce if you are in God's domain. Also, don't think you can just hide in the city. We can keep on placing new marks, so it won't matter how long you stay in the city. Inkchaline fell into despair when she heard this. She didn't mind fighting to the very end, but Gentle Snow couldn't afford to do so. This was because Gentle Snow had a special legacy, and she would lose it if she were to start playing a new account. Gentle Snow also understood there was no way to resolve the situation today, and Zero Wing might even get implicated because of her. And if it were just following the Scarlet Merchant Alliance into the underground Crystal Palace for a few days, it wouldn't be a big deal. Just as Gentle Snow was about to agree to the conditions proposed by the Undying Shadow, Shifeng suddenly stepped forward and quietly looked at the Demon Cave trio for a moment. Then, with a calm smile, he said, "The Scarlet Merchant Alliance is indeed as domineering as I've heard. However, Gentle Snow is a member of Zero Wing. If I, Zero Wing's guild leader, don't show you any respect, what will you do about it? Is he crazy?" Inkchaline gaped in shock when she heard what came from Shifeng's mouth. They were already having a headache resolving their current issue with the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Yet, Shifeng had taken the initiative to provoke the pseudo-apex power, creating even more trouble for them. Guild leader. Gentle Snow's beautiful eyes widened. Originally, this matter would have only needed her and Inkchaline to resolve. But now that Shifeng had intervened, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance would definitely start a fight to establish its dominance. Ha ha ha. Excellent. It's been too long since I've seen a youngster with such courage. Rather than getting angry at being provoked by the guild leader of some guild he had never heard of, Undying Shadow laughed when he heard Shifeng's words. It seems me and my brothers have been away from the front lines for so long that people have forgotten about our exploits. At the same time as Undying Shadow finished speaking, the surrounding spectators promptly erupted with noise. Crap. This guy must be insane. Look. Undying Shadow's face is livid. This kid is dead for sure. Who is this guy anyway? What gave him the courage to provoke the Demon Cave trio? After a round of exclamations, the surrounding players couldn't help but wonder about Shifeng's identity. After all, provoking the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's Demon Cave trio was no different than inviting death for a drink. Meanwhile, standing among the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's team, Abyss Water had remained indifferent to the entire situation thus far. However, when he saw Shifeng stepping out from Scarecrow Fox's team, his expression instantly changed. Why is he here? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3425, Chapter 499, Black Flame Takes Action. Chapter 3425, Chapter 499, Black Flame Takes Action. Chapter 499, Black Flame Takes Action. Crystal City of Secrets, Underground Crystal Palace's entrance. A moment after Undying Shadow finished speaking, the eldest of the Demon Cave trio suddenly vanished from everyone's sight. Then, before the noisy crowd could react, he had already appeared in front of Shifeng and reached for Shifeng's shoulder with one of his shriveled palms. Not good. When Inkchaline saw Undying Shadow's action, she frowned and hurriedly charged forward to intervene. Similar to the rest of the Greater God's domain, the Eternal Realm's NPC towns and cities prohibited players from attacking others. Should players go against this rule, nearby NPC guards would not hesitate to apprehend or kill them. However, it was a different story if an action taken was limited to only simple physical contact. In that case, the action would not be considered an attack, and the NPC guards would not pay any heed to it. But even if players did not receive any quantifiable damage in God's domain, it was still possible for them to experience a certain degree of pain and suppression if they were subjected to a sufficiently great physical force. Meanwhile, although Undying Shadow was an assassin, he was in possession of the Crimson Shadow Warrior class, a hidden class that granted players a berserker's strength and an assassin's speed. Not to mention, Undying Shadow was level 151. He also possessed the Desolate Shadow set and the Dragon's Cord set, of which the former was a well-known fragmented legendary equipment set in the Greater God's domain, while the latter was a magic weapon set that was close to rivaling legendary weapons. Even though Inkchaline was in possession of a legendary weapon, she dared not say she could beat Undying Shadow when it came to the strength attribute. So, how was a level 145 sword saint supposed to match Undying Shadow? Unfortunately, before Inkchaline could get within 10 yards of Undying Shadow, the latter had already placed his palm on Shifeng's shoulder. Gentle Snow grew anxious when she saw this, but there was nothing she could do about it. Undying Shadow's hand might not look like it was of any threat, but the downward force it exerted could be felt by even players standing over 100 yards away. In fact, the force exerted was so great that faint cracks had even appeared in the surrounding space. This guild leader of Zero Wing is too impulsive. River Light's complexion turned unpleasant when he saw Undying Shadow's hand clutching Shifeng's shoulder. Originally, this matter could have been resolved by simply apologizing. However, thanks to Shifeng's provocation, this matter was unlikely to be salvageable even if Scarecrow Fox's great commander showed up. What will I do about it? Undying Shadow snorted as he looked at Shifeng. Then, he applied even more force with his hand as he said, "Brat. I'll have you kneel for me." As soon as Undying Shadow increased the force he used, the sound of bones creaking and space shattering could be heard. At the same time, many of the surrounding players experienced suffocating pressure. Some of the nearby Tier 5 experts even got the urge to kneel. Mental intimidation. His concentration is at Tier 6. Divine Might. He's already reached the realm of Divine Might. Many of the experts present couldn't help but gasp when they experienced the oppressive feeling that constantly assaulted them. Divine Might. Inkchaline also fell into a daze when he saw Undying Shadow had seemingly become the ruler of the space around him. Divine Might. Normally, this was a form of power that only Tier 6 existences could master. Meanwhile, once a player mastered Divine Might, all existences beneath Tier 6 would be no different than ants to them. This was because one could greatly suppress those beneath Tier 6 by relying only on one's Divine Might, greatly restricting the target player's mobility and thought process. After all, if a player had to defend themselves from mental attacks constantly, there was no way they could fight at their full capacity. While it was logically possible for players of a lower tier to master Divine Might, even Tier 5 players would have an extremely difficult time doing so as players needed to reach Tier 6 in their concentration standard. This was also the biggest hurdle that prevented many experts from advancing to Tier 6. In God's domain, apart from raising tiers, the only reliable way players could improve their concentration was by honing their mental willpower. However, this was a very gradual process, and as concentration was a hidden attribute that couldn't be inspected like the several basic attributes, players wouldn't know if their training method was effective until they made noticeable progress or no progress at all after a long time. This was also why many experts were still stuck at Tier 5, unable to progress to Tier 6 despite having incredibly high combat standards. And even if a Tier 6 player restarted a new account and climbed back up to Tier 5, it would still take them a long time to develop their concentration to the Tier 6 standard. Hence, Undying Shadow's possession of Tier 6 concentration surprised everyone. Meanwhile, when Cheline thought about how Shifeng was being subjected to the dual pressure of Undying Shadow's strength and concentration, she could already picture the sight of Shifeng kneeling in front of everyone. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. However, as the seconds went by, the plaza quickly grew eerily quiet as everyone looked at Shifeng in confusion. Contrary to Chiline's and everyone else's expectations, Shifeng did not kneel. Instead, he remained standing steadily as he quietly gazed upon Undying Shadow. Undying Shadow was similarly surprised to see Shifeng standing steadily before him. "Ah, fine." Cheline also gaped in shock at this scene, her mind failing to comprehend what was going on. Undying Shadow's strength was apparent to everyone present. If he could crack the Eternal Realm's stable space with his hand alone, it meant his strength was already nearing the Tier 6 standard. Not to mention, there was also the divine might he had abruptly unleashed. If caught unprepared, Cheline doubted even she could react and adjust her body accordingly in time. But what was up with Shifeng's reaction? Shifeng didn't even flinch in response to Undying Shadow's oppression, let alone adjust his body to defend against it. Whether it was Undying Shadow's physical oppression or mental intimidation, Shifeng behaved as if neither existed. Could it be that Undying Shadow was only joking around and never intended to do anything to him? "Do you have eyes? Can't you see how surprised Undying Shadow looks? Could there be some restriction placed on the underground crystal palaces in trance that prevents players from experiencing overly powerful strength and concentration? Is that why that guy's behaving as if nothing happened? Otherwise, who could possibly withstand that kind of strength and divine might?" When the spectating crowd saw Shifeng looking unaffected by Undying Shadow's offensive, many players speculated that this might be because of the underground crystal palace's uniqueness. Hence, Shifeng was able to avoid making a fool of himself in front of everyone. However, just as everyone was starting to believe this to be so, "Since you're done playing your hand, it's my turn now," Shifeng said as he looked at the confused old man before him. Then, he gently pressed his hand on Undying Shadow's shoulder and said, "Kneel." Boom. Suddenly, a loud explosion, coupled with the sound of the ground cracking, echoed throughout the entire plaza. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd in the plaza, Undying Shadow knelt on the ground, one of his hands desperately holding onto Shifeng's arm while the other supported him on the ground. A pained expression had also appeared on Undying Shadow's face. However, even though Undying Shadow was desperately resisting to the point where the veins on his forehead had bulged, and his face had turned bright red, he still could not resist Shifeng's seemingly gentle touch as he ultimately fell flat to the ground. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3426, Chapter 500 Unfathomable. Chapter 3426, Chapter 500 Unfathomable. Chapter 500 Unfathomable. Elder Undying? The Scarlet Merchant Alliance elder, who was originally clamoring arrogantly and expecting to enjoy an entertaining show, couldn't help but widen his eyes in disbelief when he saw Undying Shadow kneeling. Undying Shadow was a legendary figure in the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. At the same time, he was the leader of the Demon Cave Trio. Whenever the trio was forced into a direct confrontation during an assassination attempt, Undying Shadow would always be the one to handle it. Whether it was in terms of direct combat capabilities or basic attributes, Undying Shadow was the strongest out of the Demon Cave Trio. In fact, out of their current 20-man team, Undying Shadow's strength was second to only Abyss Water, who wielded a legendary weapon. Even then, the gap wasn't significant enough that Abyss Water could overwhelm him to the extent that Shifeng was currently doing. Brat. You're courting death. When the Demon Cave Trio's second eldest Myriad Shadows and youngest Thousand Shadows saw Undying Shadow being forced to kneel, flames of anger ignited in their eyes as they charged at Shifeng simultaneously. There was only a distance of 20 yards separating the two Demon Cave brothers from Shifeng. For experts of their caliber, they could cross such a distance in the blink of an eye. Subsequently, Myriad Shadows and Thousand Shadows could be seen arriving by Shifeng's sides and grabbing onto his shoulders. Then, Thousand Shadows took out a Tier 4 area teleportation scroll and chanted an incantation while setting the teleportation coordinates. This was also one of the mainstream methods used by the various powers to target players in NPC towns and cities. The area teleportation scroll worked differently from other group-based teleportation scrolls. Players did not have to be in the same party to get teleported. So long as players stood within the area teleportation scroll's radius, they would be forcibly teleported when the scroll activated. For this reason, area teleportation scrolls were incredibly rare and valuable, and even pseudo-apex powers wouldn't casually use them. But now that Undying Shadow was forced to kneel in front of a crowd of thousands, they absolutely needed to make Shifeng pay. Otherwise, the reputation of both their Demon Cave Trio and the Scarlet Merchant Alliance would receive a severe blow. The only problem was that area teleportation scrolls needed several seconds to activate. So long as players ran out of the scroll's radius during this time, they could avoid getting teleported. Hence, whenever they were using an area teleportation scroll to target specific players, they would need several players working together to immobilize the target player. Since they were currently using a Tier 4 area teleportation scroll, so long as they could keep Shifeng within the scroll's 20-yard radius for several seconds, they could teleport Shifeng out of the Crystal City of Secrets. And once outside the city, they could work together to kill Shifeng easily. You're the ones courting death. Without looking at Myriad Shadows and Thousand Shadows, Shifeng pressed down on the empty space before him with his other hand and said, "Kneel, all of you." In addition to being a Tier 5 Sword Law Saint, Shifeng also had Shadow Incinerator and the Winter of Eternal Night equipped. At the same time, he was also a special lifeform and shared 10% of the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon's basic attributes. So, even though he was only at level 145, if comparing solely in terms of the strength attribute, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with a level 155 player equipped with a legendary weapon. Meanwhile, with his level 6 mana affinity, he could manipulate all mana within a 50-yard radius as if it were part of his own body. Unless others were willing to break the city's rules and attack him for real, otherwise, it wouldn't matter how many players tried to suppress him, all of them would be forced to their knees if they tried to compete with him purely in terms of strength. Following Shifeng's words, the area teleportation magic instantly crumbled, while Myriad Shadows and Thousand Shadows were forced to kneel, the two feeling as if an invisible hand was pressing down on them. Void suppression? Inkchaline's eyes went wide when she saw Myriad Shadows and Thousand Shadows getting forced onto their knees as well. She felt as if she had just seen a fantasy turn real, and she couldn't help but doubt what she saw. According to Gentle Snow, Zero Wing was merely a guild that had risen up from a miniature ancient world. Even though Zero Wing's guild leader ranked among the Luminous Glory list, he was still nothing more than a developing genius in the eyes of the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers. He couldn't even be considered a powerhouse, let alone stand shoulder to shoulder with the Scarecrow Fox adventurer team. Yet, now, simply by manipulating the mana surrounding him to perform a simple void suppression, Shifeng had managed to suppress two of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's infamous elders. Such a feat could already rival the recorded legends in the Greater God's domain. Are the Luminous Glory list's bottom rankers nowadays this strong now? River Light was similarly flabbergasted by this situation. He felt that the Seven Luminaries Alliance must be toying with him. It should be known that not even the Sacred Glory list's top 10 powerhouses could suppress the Demon Cave Trio, let alone a player ranked at the bottom of the Luminous Glory list. While the spectators were immersed in shock, Shifeng started walking toward the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's team. Every step he took was slow and casual. Yet, Everyone present felt as if their hearts were getting stepped on. "I'm in a hurry, so all of you come at me together," Chiffon calmly said to the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's gloomy-looking members, showing no reservations whatsoever toward the pseudo-apex power. "I hate to admit it, but you are indeed impressive, young man." After scrutinizing Chiffon, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's clamoring elder sneered and said, "But do you truly think you can contend with a pseudo-apex power by yourself? So long as we are willing to show our hand, neither you nor the people behind you should think of leaving this place alive." Every upper-ranking hegemonic power in the greater god's domain possessed an extraordinary foundation composed of various trump cards. These trump cards could include legions of experts, war weapons, mighty battle arrays, etc. While these trump cards were limited in number, they could be used to slay even Tier 6 gods. Meanwhile, as a pseudo-apex power, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's foundation was magnitudes stronger than upper-ranking hegemonic powers. Currently, although the greater god's domain's various powers were limited in the means they could use in the Eternal Realm, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance still had plenty of ways to deal with individual Tier 5 players. When Cheline heard this, her expression grew a little more serious. No matter how strong an individual was, it would still be difficult for them to go up against an entire power, much less a pseudo-apex power. If the Scarlet Merchant Alliance was willing to pay the corresponding price, it was entirely possible for it to keep Scarecrow Fox out of the Crystal City of Secrets. "Feel free to try, then," Chiffon sneered. He had never flinched, even when he was going up against apex powers in his previous life. Now that he possessed a Tier 5 advanced legendary mana body and the godly relic Shadow Incinerator, he had even less reason to be afraid of powers like the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. "Good. I'll grant you your wish." When the clamoring elder heard Chiffon's response, he took out an ink-black crystal ball from his bag, the crystal ball holding so much power that even the Tier 5 players standing over 100 yards away couldn't help but shudder. Tier 6. The ink-black crystal housed a large-scale destruction spell at the Tier 6 standard. Meanwhile, Chiffon unsheathed the Shadow Incinerator when he saw the clamoring elder take out the ink-black crystal ball. He no longer intended to hold back, deciding to eliminate the clamoring elder along with the rest of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's members right here and now. This would save him from having to deal with the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's harassment in the underground Crystal Palace. However, just when the clamoring elder was about to unleash the spell stored in the crystal ball. "Cease your hand, Elder Cliff," Abyss Water shouted at the clamoring elder. Then, he turned to Chiffon and smiled, saying, "We were in the wrong today, Guild Leader Black Flame. On behalf of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, I apologize to you and your friends. As a token of apology, please accept this map of the underground Crystal Palace that we found." Vice Guild Leader. The clamoring elder named Burning Cliff couldn't help but be puzzled as he turned toward Abyss Water. Apart from Burning Cliff, Cheline and River Light also couldn't help but gape in shock. What was going on here? The Scarlet Merchant Alliance's elder Burning Cliff was clearly determined to fight to the death. Yet, before the fight could break out, the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's vice guild leader had taken the initiative to apologize. He even offered a precious map of the underground Crystal Palace as compensation. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3427, Chapter 501, Lord of War Goddesses. Chapter 3427, Chapter 501, Lord of War Goddesses. Chapter 501, Lord of War Goddesses. Crystal City of Secrets, underground Crystal Palace's entrance. What's going on? Why did the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's vice guild leader apologize? I heard that Abyss Water is a vicious person. Now that he has become a vice guild leader in the Scarlet Merchant Alliance, it's unlikely he'll back off even if Scarecrow Fox's great commander shows up in person. What kind of origin does that Black Flame guy have? Could that guy be the son of some Apex Powers big shot? After Chiffon accepted the map of the underground Crystal Palace and entered the secret land with Scarecrow Fox's team, a commotion immediately occurred in the entrance plaza. The Scarlet Merchant Alliance was known for its domineering behavior. After suffering such a huge slight, it would already be a miracle for the pseudo-apex power not to retaliate with all its might, let alone apologize and offer compensation. Such a situation was utterly unbelievable. What is the meaning of this, Vice Guild Leader Abyss? After getting back on his feet, Undying Shadow looked at Abyss Water with a questioning gaze. If we don't teach that brat a lesson after suffering such an insult, we won't be able to establish a foothold in the Crystal City of Secrets in the future. The average elder in the Scarlet Merchant Alliance might be of lower standing than Vice Guild leaders like Abyss Water, but Undying Shadow was a long-standing elder who had contributed greatly to the guild, so he did not need to behave cautiously when dealing with the guild's Vice Guild leaders. On the contrary, many Vice Guild leaders would treat him with respect so as to rope him to their side. Honestly, if it weren't for the guild leader's command, Undying Shadow would have never chosen to follow Abyss Water. At this time, Undying Shadow wasn't the only person with questions. Burning Cliff and the other guild elders present also looked at Abyss Water for answers. If not for their status in the guild being lower than Abyss Water, a paragon personally appointed to the position of Vice Guild Leader by the guild leader, they would have long taken action against Shifeng instead of letting him go. Shifeng might be powerful for being able to overwhelm the Demon Cave trio, but he was still only one Tier 5 player. He still didn't have the qualifications to behave arrogantly in front of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Can't establish a foothold? In response to Undying Shadow's question, Abyss Water indifferently asked, "Who says so?" Undying Shadow immediately went quiet. The Scarlet Merchant Alliance was one of the top 2 powers operating in the current Crystal City of Secrets. If the Scarlet Merchant Alliance wished to establish a foothold in the city, who would dare say anything about it? But after this scene, Undying Shadow quickly calmed his anger when he understood Abyss Water's point. It's going to be difficult for us to recruit new members in the city. After all, which expert would be willing to join a guild that backs away from a lone swordsman? That's right, Vice Guild Leader. Burning Cliff nodded in agreement. It might be fine if Black Flame is a famous figure in the greater god's domain, but he's just a bottom-ranked Luminous Glory expert. We'll get a bad name if this news spreads. A bottom-ranked Luminous Glory expert? Turning to Burning Cliff, Abyss Water questioned, "Do you think a bottom-ranked Luminous Glory expert can single-handedly suppress the Demon Cave trio? Since when has the 7 Luminaries Alliance's Luminous Glory list become so prestigious?" Burning Cliff fell silent at this response. As for Undying Shadow, his expression turned somewhat ugly. If a genius ranked at the bottom of the Luminous Glory list could single-handedly suppress the Demon Cave trio, the Luminous Glory list in question wouldn't be the same Luminous Glory list they knew. After all, not even the top-ranking geniuses of the current Sacred Glory list could accomplish such a list, much less a bottom-ranked genius on the Luminous Glory list. "Could you be familiar with Black Flame, Vice Guild Leader?" Burning Cliff asked out of curiosity. Of course, even if Abyss Water answered no, Burning Cliff wouldn't believe him. It should be known that even after witnessing Shifeng overpowering the Demon Cave trio, Burning Cliff was confident he and the other elders present could kill Shifeng nonetheless. Yet, Abyss Water had intervened without hesitation and even offered the precious map, which they had gone to great lengths to obtain, as compensation. If Abyss Water had done all this without knowing anything about the swordsman known as Black Flame, there was no way he would make such an unintelligible move. Meanwhile, Undying Shadow, Myriad Shadows, and Thousand Shadows quickly understood Burning Cliff's point and turned toward Abyss Water, curious to learn who Black Flame was. "I do know him. Moreover, I can clearly tell you that it's inadvisable for us to provoke him now," Abyss Water said. Then, he shared a document through the team chat and continued, "This is the information I collected on Black Flame. You can take a look, but never leak it to others." After his defeat on Darkstar, Abyss Water promptly utilized his connections to investigate Shifeng. After all, there was no way a genius ranked at the bottom of the Luminous Glory list could defeat him, a paragon originating from one of the 12 sanctuaries. He absolutely refused to believe such a thing could be possible. Not to mention, even after his defeat and subsequent departure from Darkstar, the Eternal Chamber of Commerce did not offer him any responses. It was as if the Eternal Chamber of Commerce never really cared whether he became one of its partners, and this situation confused him greatly. However, after paying a great price, he finally dug out a piece of information that many powers had tried their best to hide about Black Flame, the Azura Sword Emperor. Inadvisable for us to provoke him? Aren't you putting Black Flame on too high of a pedestal, Vice Guild Leader? When Burning Cliff and the other elders of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance saw how seriously Abyss Water spoke of Shafong, they couldn't help but feel as if the latest addition to the guild's rank of Vice Guild Leaders was inexperienced. While unverifiable through the Greater Gods Domain's historical records, there were many stories of legendary and mythical individuals single-handedly destroying entire major powers. There were even stories of individuals going up against an entire apex power by themselves, and these stories served as inspirations for and were worshipped by countless experts. However, as veterans who had experienced countless storms and tides, Burning Cliff and the others knew that even if these miracles were real, the people behind these miracles should all be at Tier 6. Moreover, they would be existences who had walked to the very limits of Tier 6 lifeforms. As for Tier 5 lifeforms, if there even existed stories of Tier 5 lifeforms accomplishing any of the aforementioned feats, they would be just that. Stories. Of course, Burning Cliff and the others wouldn't dare outright say such a thing to Abyss Water's face. Despite their skepticism, they still chose to read the document Abyss Water shared. After all, Abyss Water was officially a Vice Guild Leader of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Apart from the Demon Cave trio, everyone else would be asking for trouble if they tried to disrespect him. Even if he couldn't outright dismiss them from the guild, he could assign them to a position that was far from the guild's central power. However, after Burning Cliff and the others read through the shared document, a wide variety of emotions quickly colored their originally indifferent expressions. He summoned war goddesses to fight several dozen powers. A Tier 5 war goddess? Can such a thing be summoned by players? The Demon Cave trio broke into a cold sweat after watching the battle video attached to the document. It was especially so when they saw the Tier 5 war goddess in the video obliterating so many holy race experts. The pinnacle of techniques. The true pinnacle of techniques. The Tier 5 war goddess in the video was an existence no Tier 5 player should even dream of challenging. Even though the Scarlet Merchant Alliance had a couple of trump cards in the Eternal Realm that could be used to easily dispose of Tier 5 players, all of them would be nothing but a joke in front of a Tier 5 war goddess. It was no wonder Abyss Water had intervened and even apologized. The Lord of War Goddesses. This was the new title the various powers, who had participated in the battle outside the Courtyard of Space, had designated for the Azura Sword Emperor. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3428, Chapter 502, Times have changed. Chapter 3428, Chapter 502, Times have changed. Chapter 502, Times have changed in a vast jungle inside the underground Crystal Palace. Over a dozen streaks of light landed on the forest, startling many nearby small animals. We've arrived on the 4th floor, just like that. Shock filled Chaline's eyes as she surveyed her surroundings. Although Shafong had already proven himself extraordinary with his performance outside the underground Crystal Palace, she didn't think he would have an equally surprising card up his sleeve. The underground Crystal Palace was a secret land with a level range of 120 to 200, and it had one floor for every 10 levels. Normally, whenever players entered the underground Crystal Palace, regardless of which floor was their actual destination, they would have to start from the first floor, which had a level range of 120 to 129. Originally, such a setting wouldn't have been a big deal as players simply needed to spend more time reaching their desired floor. However, the problem was that every player could only stay in the underground Crystal Palace for 3 days. Regardless of whether players died, they would be teleported out of the secret land once the 3-day time limit was up. To make matters worse, according to their understanding, the underground Crystal Palace's floors were massive, with each floor being at least 3 times as big as the average large-sized map found in the outside world. In a situation where even Tier 5 players could only rely on their 2 feet to travel, they would have wasted half of their 3-day time limit by the time they reached a floor that corresponded to their levels. Moreover, that was under the premise that they didn't encounter any obstructions from monsters. If they had to stop to defeat monsters or take detours, they would have to waste even more time reaching their destination. However, After their team entered the underground Crystal Palace, Shifeng took out 2 tokens and handed them to Gentle Snow and Desolate Fury. Then, with the help of these tokens, their entire team was teleported to the underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor. "Who exactly is your guild leader, Snow?" River Light asked as he turned to Gentle Snow after scanning the 4th floor's environment. "Don't say that he's the leader of a guild coming from some miniature world. Do you think I will still believe such a thing?" Apart from River Light, several other members of Scarecrow Fox also turned to look at Gentle Snow with an inquiring gaze. Originally, they thought Gentle Snow's guild leader would only be an ordinary expert, and they were only willing to let Shifeng join their team because of Gentle Snow. But now, they realized how laughable their previous thoughts were. Setting aside the Scarlet Merchant Alliance's matter, just Shifeng's ability to teleport them to the underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor was already beyond the means of any ordinary expert. After all, this was a mind-blowingly massive opportunity. Currently, even though the various powers operating in the Crystal City of Secrets had already dispatched many powerful teams into the underground Crystal Palace, it would still take them at least a day before they could reach the 4th floor. In other words, not only would their team be the first to explore the 4th floor, but they could also have the entire floor to themselves for at least a day. Faced with River Light's question, Gentle Snow didn't know what to say. This was because she felt that even if she told the truth, neither River Light nor the other members of Scarecrow Fox would believe her. Though, honestly, even she was starting to wonder if she was in a dream. According to Shifeng, in the 2 months she had spent with Scarecrow Fox's team, only several days had passed in the real world. Originally, she thought she must have bridged the gap between her and Shifeng with the extra development time she managed to gain. After all, although 2 months wasn't a long time, her worldview and strength had still undergone a qualitative transformation. In fact, she had changed so much that even the Paimon conglomerate, which previously seemed like a very troublesome opponent, no longer seemed as intimidating as before. She felt that so long as she returned to the miniature ancient world, she could help improve Zero Wing significantly. However, by the looks of things, rather than her, Gentle Snow felt that Shifeng was the one who had gained 2 extra months. Moreover, he must have encountered numerous opportunities to achieve such frightening growth. While Gentle Snow was experiencing mixed feelings about Shifeng's growth, Shifeng was busy surveying the surrounding environment. In most parts of the Eternal Realm, mana and holy power existed in the environment in a 50-50 ratio. However, on the underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor, holy power took up 95% of the energy present in the environment, whereas mana took up only a measly 5%. Because of this environment, every monster present on the floor was brimming with holy power. If a human player were to stand within 30 yards of the monsters here, they would immediately find their use of mana getting interrupted. Even players with Tier 5 epic mana bodies wouldn't be spared from this influence. If players were to fight a bunch of Tier 4 mythic monsters brimming with holy power in such a situation, even Tier 5 players would face great difficulty. Meanwhile, this was something Ink Cheline and the others also quickly noticed. Battle apes. Ink Cheline frowned as she looked at the group of over 100 level 152 mythic monsters gathered in the distance. Greystone Battle Ape, Ferocious Beast, Mythic, level 152 HP 4 billion. The Greystone Battle Apes were only 3 meters tall, but all of them were clad in armor and wielded weapons. Different from the average monster, these battle apes were clearly creatures that excelled at group combat. Going by past experiences, Ink Cheline knew that battle apes were highly intelligent. These Greystone battle apes also looked like they were using standardized equipment inscribed with secret runes, similar to what NPC guards of NPC cities used. So, they should be able to form a battle array that boosted their overall combat power. Even in the outside world, a dozen of these Tier 4 mythic-ranked Greystone battle apes fighting together with the support of a battle array could kill a Tier 5 player. In this place where players could not use mana, fighting these Greystone battle apes would be a nightmare for players. River, you and your group get ready, Ink Cheline commanded after pondering for a moment. We'll go with the traditional method and trap a portion within a barrier first. Everyone else, use a holy power bottle and quickly eliminate the commanding battle ape. At Ink Cheline's command, Riverlight and the others nodded before quickly taking out several Tier 4 magic scrolls from their bag spaces. The fourth floor's environment and monsters might be tougher than expected, but they were experts of the Scarecrow Fox Adventurer team. They had come across many such situations before this, so it was only a matter of wasting a little more time to eliminate these Greystone battle apes. While everyone was getting ready for battle, though, Shifeng, who had been feeling the mana around him all this time, suddenly said, "Vice Commander Cheline, I have a way for us to clear out these monsters quickly." "A way to clear out these battle apes quickly?" Shifeng's words immediately piqued Cheline's curiosity. "Do you really have a way to do so, Guild Leader Black Flame? Going by our adventurer team's past experiences of fighting battle apes, these Greystone battle apes should be able to form battle arrays. Moreover, the battle array's strength would grow stronger the more battle apes there are to maintain it. If we try to fight them as one big group instead of splitting them up into smaller groups, killing them will be challenging. They might not be a match for the Demon Cave trio, but fighting monsters was Scarecrow Fox's specialty. However, out of all the times she had watched and personally fought in fights involving battle arrays, the best way she could think of for their current team of fewer than 20 players to eliminate the 100+ Greystone battle apes would be to tackle them in batches. She also found it hard to imagine there would be any better methods. "I can prevent them from using battle arrays within 100 yards of me," Shifeng said, chuckling. "If we are talking about battle apes that cannot use battle arrays, I'm sure you all can deal with them easily, right?" The suppression by holy power was indeed powerful on the fourth floor, and even players with Tier 5 epic mana bodies would be greatly affected. However, Shifeng had previously tested and found that his Tier 5 advanced legendary mana body remained unaffected. He could even maintain control over the mana within a 100-yard radius. Within this radius, none of the battle apes should think of activating their battle arrays, which relied on mana to activate. "If what you say is true, we can try to take them on all at once," Cheline said, still somewhat skeptical. However, because of Shifeng's previous performance and the massive opportunity he had provided them by bringing them straight to the fourth floor, she felt she should at least give his suggestion a try out of respect. And even if Shifeng's plan failed, they could simply execute the original plan. Subsequently, several players separated from the team to lure the Greystone battle apes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3429, Chapter 503, 3 Golden Masters. Chapter 3429, Chapter 503, 3 Golden Masters. Chapter 503, 3 Golden Masters. "All right. Lure them here," Cheline commanded through the team chat upon seeing the Shield Warrior and Guardian Knight, who had gone to lure the Greystone battle apes, entering positions. "Blaze Eye, keep an eye out for any battle apes trying to break away from the group. We cannot let any of them leave to call for reinforcement." Battle apes were highly intelligent monsters. Upon reaching the Tier 4 mythic rank, their intelligence could already closely rival players. Not only did they know how to fight in a coordinated group, but they also knew how to seek help from nearby battle apes. There were many instances where players would underestimate mythic-ranked battle apes and unknowingly find themselves surrounded by an army of thousands of battle apes. When thousands of battle apes joined together to form a battle array, even if all of them were only at the Tier 4 mythic rank, they could take on a Tier 6 player. Moreover, there was a high chance the Tier 6 player in question would get whittled down and ultimately die from exhaustion. Hence, when facing highly intelligent monsters like battle apes, there were two things players must do. Firstly, players needed to ensure they had the ability to kill a small number of battle apes within a short period of time. Secondly, players needed to ensure no battle apes could escape and call for reinforcements. Once the size of a battle ape army reached 10,000, even bona fide Tier 6 players would have to flee, let alone Tier 5 players. "Don't worry, Big Sis Cheline. I won't let any of them get away," a ranger youth named Blaze I responded confidently. Subsequently, when Cheline and the others saw the Greystone battle apes getting closer and closer, they couldn't help but grow nervous. By now, the group of 100+ Greystone battle apes had already formed a battle array, allowing every one of them to closely rival Tier 5 legendary monsters in strength and speed. Combined with the strengthening effect of holy power, even someone like Inkchaleen, who wielded a legendary weapon and shield, could only afford to tank about a dozen Greystone battle apes at a time. If any other shield warrior or guardian knight tried to tank the Greystone battle apes without a legendary weapon and shield, they could, at most, take on 4 at a time. Should they try to take on 10 or more, they would die in a matter of seconds, even with healers healing them. With less than 20 players on their team, if they couldn't isolate these Greystone battle apes into groups in time using magic barriers, it wouldn't take more than 10 seconds for their whole team to suffer annihilation. In reality, there was also the option of approaching the group of Greystone battle apes and launching a sneak attack instead of luring the group over. However, considering that there were other battle apes operating in the surroundings, Shifeng felt that it was safer to lure the monsters over. 200 yards. 150 yards. 80 yards. Take action, Shifeng commanded when he saw that the Greystone battle apes had already moved within 100 yards of him. At the same time, he unleashed his world creation. Immediately, with Shifeng as the center, mana as dense as metal began to spread and envelop every player and monster on the battlefield. Mana. My mana isn't suppressed anymore. River Light was greatly surprised when he sensed his body regaining the ability to radiate mana to the surroundings. Previously, even though he had a Tier 5 epic mana body, he couldn't even manipulate the mana within his body, let alone letting it out of his body. As a result, he could only use Tier 3 and Tier 4 healing spells, drastically reducing his healing potential. However, in his current state, he felt that he could utilize 100% of his mana. This performance was even better than he could normally achieve in the Eternal Realm. Quick, look. The Battle Apes battle array has crumbled. Blaze Eye excitedly stated as he fired arrows at the Greystone battle apes from the top of a large tree. What a powerful mana domain, Inkchaleen exclaimed. Not only did Shifeng's mana domain weaken the battle apes, but it also allowed everyone on the team to recover their original combat power. With these changes, their team could take on hundreds of Greystone battle apes with ease, let alone a measly 100 or so. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng crushed the Greystone battle apes battle array with his world creation, the several commanding battle apes quickly realized the severity of the situation and let loose several roars. Not good. Don't let them get away. Gentle Snow hurriedly charged forward when she heard the roars of the commanding battle apes. As mentioned before, battle apes were highly intelligent monsters. Should they realize they were at a disadvantage, their first course of action would be to call for reinforcements. However, if the disparity between them and their opponents was too large, they would choose to split up and escape without hesitation. This was also the biggest problem players faced when fighting battle apes. The underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor had a forest terrain. It was the perfect terrain for battle apes to operate at peak performance. If a group of mythic-ranked battle apes decided to flee, trying to stop them from fleeing would be an absolute nightmare. When Inkchaleen saw the Greystone battle apes scattering like startled birds, she couldn't help but experience a headache. Although everyone on the team could now fight at full strength, the majority of them could only pin down 3 or 4 battle apes at a time. After all, not much had changed regarding their speed. Not to mention, Shifeng's mana domain only had a 100-yard radius. 4 Tier 4 monsters, crossing such a distance would take no more than a second. But 1 second was far from enough for them to activate their magic barriers. However, unlike everyone else, Shifeng remained unfazed even after seeing the battle apes choosing to flee. Instead, he quickly advanced to the center of the fleeing battle apes and calmly said, "Fury, La Roja, cross, I'll leave them to you." In response to Shifeng's words, Desolate Fury calmly looked at the fleeing battle apes and said in a slightly excited voice, "Is it finally our turn to make a move? I thought I would only get to spectate from the side throughout this entire operation," Cross said, laughing. "All right, enough talking. Hurry up and get to work," La Roja said, smiling as she grabbed the great bow she carried. Then, she vanished into thin air and reappeared over 100 meters above the forest. At this time, La Roja was like an empress overlooking a battlefield as she stood in the sky. Whether it was the battle apes running through the forest or jumping on treetops, Every one of them was clearly presented in her eyes. Subsequently, La Roja drew the bowstring and released it. Then, over 100 arrows scattered from her bow and accurately struck all of the fleeing greystone battle apes, causing their movements to freeze momentarily and their HP to fall by over 10 million. At the same time, Desolate Fury and Cross swiftly traversed through the forest. While doing so, not only did their feet stay off the ground, but they could also make sharp turns without relying on trees for leverage. Even though the greystone battle apes were already plenty agile as they jumped from tree to tree, Desolate Fury and Cross were even more agile. In the blink of an eye, many of the fleeing greystone battle apes were knocked off course and sent crashing to the ground, giving the Scarecrow Fox members on the ground an easy time to intercept them. Heavens! They're moving in the air. They're Golden Masters. 3 Golden Masters. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3430 Chapter 504 Secret Treasure Set. Chapter 3430 Chapter 504 Secret Treasure Set. Chapter 504 Secret Treasure Set. The sight of Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja fighting in the air stunned Gentle Snow and Scarecrow Fox's members. If it were outside the Eternal Realm, any Tier 4 player could easily achieve flight and combat in the air. However, in the Eternal Realm where holy power was present in significant volume, even Tier 5 saints could not fly. At most, they could leap and propel themselves to a great height by relying on mana. Before reaching Tier 6, the only way players could achieve actual flight was by relying on gold combat techniques. In other words, players would have to be Golden Masters. 3 Golden Masters. River Light couldn't help but take a deep breath as he watched the 3 people fighting in the air. This number is probably already on par with what the various Apex powers have dispatched in their exploration teams, right? No. Not even Apex powers can take out such a lineup in the current Eternal Realm, Inc. said definitively. As one of Scarecrow Fox's vice commanders, Inc. had access to a lot more information regarding the various Apex powers than even the average executive of upper-ranking hegemonic powers. Golden Masters were essentially individuals who had reached the extremes of a particular field of techniques, and even the various Apex powers only had a small number of such experts under their command. Every one of these experts was highly valued by the various Apex powers, and not even Vice Guild leaders had the authority to command them, let alone send several of them to the Holy World earlier on. Hence, in the current Eternal Realm, it was impossible for any single Apex power to form a team spearheaded by 3 Golden Masters. Were they always this strong? Similar to Scarecrow Fox's members, Gentle Snow also wore a shocked expression as she looked at Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja. However, part of why she was surprised was for a different reason. Gentle Snow was not a stranger to the trio. She had met them during Star Lake City's city battle, and she had seen them displaying strength superior to the average titled expert. However, it was also apparent that Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja had yet to reach the 5th floor standard back then, as they were a lot weaker than Cheng Xin and Amber Soul, who were both 5th floor experts. So, how in the world did the 3 of them suddenly become Golden Masters? Stop staring and start erecting the barriers. The 3 of them can't pin the apes down forever, Shi Feng shouted when he saw that everyone was still idly watching the trio fight. It was true that gold combat techniques were powerful and could let players achieve extraordinary feats. However, using gold combat techniques also put a massive toll on players' stamina and concentration. Hence, these techniques were only meant to be used during crucial moments rather than continuously. Even Shi Feng, with his advanced legendary mana body and Tier 6 concentration, could not afford to do so. Inc. was the first to snap out of her daze. Immediately, she commanded, "River, take action." Hearing this, River Light and several other Scarecrow Fox members unfurled the Tier 4 magic scrolls in their hands and began chanting an incantation. In 3 seconds, multiple translucent barriers made of mana appeared across the battlefield and joined together to cover a 200-yard radius. These barriers isolated the Greystone Battle Apes into small groups, and unless they could break the barriers using force, their hopes of escaping would be dashed. Upon seeing the magic barriers taking shape, Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja stopped using flowing space. Instead, with Desolate Fury at the front and Cross and La Roja attacking from behind, the trio began clearing out the trapped battle apes. Because the Tier 4 master barriers were created via magic scrolls, they were a little weaker than Tier 4 master barriers personally created and maintained by players. Even so, these barriers would have no trouble keeping the Greystone battle apes trapped for 2 or 3 hours, which was more than enough cleanup time for the team. Everyone on the team had already reached Tier 5. Although the Greystone battle apes had 4 billion HP each, every member of the team could easily deal over 10 million damage with their skills and spells. If everyone focused their attacks on one particular battle ape, it wouldn't take more than a minute for them to finish it. Subsequently, in less than 15 minutes, every one of the 100-plus Greystone battle apes died at the hands of Desolate Fury, Inkchaleen, and the others. The speed at which they eliminated the group of mythic monsters was so fast that even Inkchaleen, a highly experienced monster hunter, couldn't help but be shocked. Due to the intelligence of battle apes, defeating them was a very troublesome task. Normally, even a 20-man team of Tier 5 experts would need at least 2 hours to eliminate a group of 100-plus mythic-ranked battle apes. Yet, now, thanks to Shifeng's group of 4, their team was able to speed up this process by multiple times. This is so satisfying. I know, right? Our grinding efficiency here is much faster than what we could achieve outside. I'm nearly at level 153 after this wave. After the last Greystone battle ape fell, everyone was surprised to find that their experience bar had filled up by a small chunk. In the current Eternal Realm, players' levels and grinding efficiency were incredibly important. Not only could players equip higher-level weapons and equipment as their levels increased, but they could also afford to explore higher-leveled maps. Meanwhile, in the underground Crystal Palace, the speed at which players could defeat the monsters here was of utmost importance. As players could only stay in the underground Crystal Palace for a limited time, the faster they could defeat the monsters they faced, the more monsters they could kill during their 3-day time limit. This, in turn, would increase their harvest from the secret land. Jackpot! We hit the jackpot! River Light, who had gone to loot the Greystone battle apes' scattered corpses, suddenly shouted. Jackpot! Did a secret treasure drop? Crap! It really is a secret treasure. How are you so lucky today, team leader River? Following River Light's exclamation, the other members of the team who had gone to loot the Greystone battle apes turned toward him with surprised looks. It was true that the Greystone battle apes offered lucrative loot as they were level 152 mythic monsters. Aside from dropping a bunch of materials and level 150 plus dark gold equipment, they also dropped god crystal fragments at a low probability. Even so, before River Light's discovery, nobody thought the Greystone battle apes could drop secret treasures, the underground Crystal Palace's main attraction. Everyone was previously of the opinion that only boss monsters could drop secret treasures. How lucky of him! Shifeng was also a little surprised by River Light's discovery, though he had low hopes of such discoveries happening frequently. The Greystone battle apes indeed had a chance of dropping secret treasures, but the probability of that happening was less than 0.1%. So, rather than grinding the Greystone battle apes for secret treasures, Shifeng personally placed more importance on the EXP they provided. Even after evenly splitting the EXP among everyone on the team, Shifeng still saw his experience bar increasing by a visible chunk after defeating the group of battle apes. Moreover, that was after the God of Time's curse had already reduced his EXP gain by 50%. At this rate, he could catch up to the average level of players operating in the Crystal City of Secrets by the time he concluded his 3-day exploration of the underground Crystal Palace. While Shifeng was estimating how many levels he could gain in the next 3 days, his attention was caught by a pale grey bead with incomplete secret runes engraved on it. Upon taking a closer look at the glass bead on the ground, he couldn't help but be stunned. A secret treasure set? Quickly, Shifeng picked up the glass bead and took out a piece of 7 luminaries crystal to infuse into it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3431, Chapter 505, Empire taking shape. Chapter 3431, Chapter 505 Empire Taking Shape. Chapter 505. Empire Taking Shape. Is there something special about that secret treasure, Guild Leader Black Flame? Desolate Fury couldn't help but grow curious when he saw Shifeng hastily picking up a grey bead from the ground and appraising it. Likewise, Cross and LaRoja also noticed Shifeng's behavior and paused their looting action, a surprised look appearing on their faces as they looked at Shifeng. Unlike everyone else on the team, the three of them had raided a World Mode team dungeon with Shifeng. They were also part of the first team of players to have discovered the existence of secret treasures. However, even when the Courtyard of Space's final boss dropped two extraordinary secret treasures, Shifeng barely paid attention to them. Yet, even though the glass bead was clearly a common-ranked secret treasure, Shifeng was showing great interest in it. So, it was only natural they'd be curious about it. It is indeed very special. Shifeng nodded and smiled. If we can complete a set, we could even challenge level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeons. Level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeons? Upon hearing Shifeng's words, the trio couldn't help but look at the glass bead in Shifeng's hand with even greater surprise. While they didn't know how challenging a level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeon was exactly, they knew that level 160 God Mode Regional Dungeons were places where even Tier 6 experts had difficulty surviving, while level 160, Tier 5 expert teams could get annihilated easily. Going by the World Mode Courtyard of Space's difficulty, they could easily imagine how challenging a level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeon could be. However, Shifeng didn't bother offering the trio any additional explanations. Instead, he focused all his attention on the grey glass bead. During the middle stages of the Eternal Realm's birth, the level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeon 100 Eyes Canyon was one of the most popular places for players. Not only did the monsters there drop plenty of secret treasures and high-tiered skills and spells, but it was also possible to obtain the Lord's Certificate from there. During the Eternal Realm's early to mid stages, the entire realm was in chaos, and only a small number of NPC towns, cities, and fortresses existed. Because of this, there were plenty of lands rich in resources for players to develop and establish a country of their own. The only problem was that these undeveloped lands were located far from any NPC strongholds, and reaching them required a lot of time, even with the help of legendary flying mounts. It might not be a problem if players only needed to travel to these places once, but the time players wasted on travel would quickly pile up if they had to make multiple trips. This was where guild cities came in. To establish a guild city in the Eternal Realm, players would need to have the Lord's Certificate, and to obtain a Lord's Certificate, players would need to explore and raid the 100 Eyes Canyon. 1. Normally, only Tier 6 teams could raid a level 160 World Mode Regional Dungeon, but there were exceptions to everything. In this case, it was a Tier 5 tank equipped with a secret treasure set. Secret treasures normally already provided a sizable increase to mana protection for players. Meanwhile, secret treasure sets provided an additional boost to mana protection on top of that. When Tier 5 players equipped a secret treasure set, even if it was common ranked, they could still have the mana protection of a Tier 6 player. Originally, Shifeng didn't place much hope on obtaining a secret treasure set. After all, even non-set secret treasures were already incredibly rare, let alone secret treasure sets. Normally, these sets could only be obtained from World Mode Regional Dungeons such as the 100 Eyes Canyon. As for the Underground Crystal Palace, Shifeng had only ever heard of secret treasure sets dropping from the level 160+ areas. Meanwhile, after Shifeng infused 100 units of 7 Luminaries crystal into the glass bead, the secret treasure stats were revealed to him. Grey Moon Secret Treasure, Tier 1 Secret Treasure, Common, attaches to leg guards. Once attached, it can increase the wearer's mana protection by 13%. 6P Set Effect, increases mana protection by an additional 30%. It's the Grey Moon set. Shifeng was initially stunned when he saw the Grey Moon Secret Treasure's stats. Then, ecstasy filled him. He had heard of the Grey Moon set in his previous life. It was a very special existence among common secret treasure sets. It was also the Underground Crystal Palace's most iconic secret treasure set, and what made the set special was that it did not have any class restrictions nor armor type restrictions. As a comparison, The combat-ranked orichalcum secret treasure obtained from the Courtyard of Space could only be attached to gauntlets, which were gloves belonging to the plate armor category. Meanwhile, because of the Grey Moon secret treasure's uniqueness, it became standard equipment for the various powers' main forces during the Eternal Realm's later stages. Normally, though, the Grey Moon secret treasure could only be obtained from monsters roaming the underground Crystal Palace's level 160+ areas. So, the fact that one dropped in the level 150 area was a pleasant surprise to Shifeng. If he could complete a set and let a tier 5 tank equip it, even if it was only a level 150 tank, he could begin exploring the Hundred Eyes Canyon right away. Here is the other secret treasure that dropped, Guild Leader Black Flame. At this time, Inkchaleen approached Shifeng and handed him the secret treasure that River Light found. At the same time, she couldn't help but grow a little envious as she looked at the Grey Moon secret treasure that Shifeng had just appraised. Before entering the underground Crystal Palace, they had agreed that they would distribute the loot based on individual contributions to the team. Although the Greystone Battle Apes had dropped 2 secret treasures, going by contribution rankings, both secret treasures would go to Shifeng. When the other members of Scarecrow Fox saw this, they, too, couldn't help but grow envious. However, none of them voiced any objections. If not for Shifeng breaking apart the Battle Apes' battle array, they would have had great difficulty defeating the monsters. There was even a possibility they would get annihilated. Hence, Shifeng deserved to have both secret treasures. However, after Shifeng appraised the second secret treasure, he found that, while it might be a common secret treasure, it wasn't part of the Grey Moon set. So, he handed it back to Inkchaleen and said, "You can have this one. There is a specific kind of secret treasure I want. If any secret treasure of that kind drops, I want priority over it. In exchange, I will give you a secret treasure of equal rank every time I exercise this privilege. I will also cover the appraisal cost. What do you think? Is that really alright?" Inkchaleen asked in surprise. With Shifeng's 5-man group's contributions, even if more secret treasures dropped afterward, Scarecrow Fox's group was unlikely to receive many. However, if they followed Shifeng's distribution method, Scarecrow Fox stood to get a lot more secret treasures. Of course. Shifeng chuckled. He did not care for the average common secret treasure. Even if players fully equipped themselves with independent common secret treasures, they wouldn't see a qualitative transformation in their combat performance. However, it was a different story for the Grey Moon set. Hence, he'd rather give up the chance to obtain more secret treasures and focus on completing the Grey Moon set first instead. As for Gentle Snow, Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja, none of them had any opinions about Shifeng's decision. It was especially so for Gentle Snow. She had received a lot of help from Scarecrow Fox during the past 2 months. So, even if Shifeng didn't suggest such a distribution method, she would have given her share of secret treasures to Inkchaleen. Subsequently, with the help of Shifeng's mana domain, the team rapidly eliminated the surrounding Greystone Battle Apes. After hunting continuously for 2 whole days, the team managed to eliminate several hundred groups of Greystone Battle Apes. Although the harvest they got from subsequent groups of battle apes was not as good as the first group they killed, their luck still wasn't all too terrible, obtaining 1 secret treasure for every 2 or 3 groups they killed. After hunting several hundred groups, they obtained a total of 142 secret treasures. Out of these 142 secret treasures, 106 went to Shifeng's group of 5. However, of these 106 secret treasures, only 14 were part of the Grey Moon set. To make matters worse, none of these set pieces could form a complete set. Every set was missing 1 or 2 pieces. EXP-wise, Shifeng was able to reach level 152. While Shifeng and the others were resting, Gentle Snow, who had returned after logging off to rest in the real world, approached Shifeng with a gloomy expression. "Guild leader, I got in touch with Hidden Soul. TL notes. 1. This was where guild cities came in. To establish a guild city in the Eternal Realm, players would need to have the Lord's Certificate, and to obtain a Lord's Certificate, players would need to explore and raid the Hundred Eyes Canyon. I have no idea if this part is accurate or not, as this part was partially missing from the raws I received. I just made a guess based on the context given, so I will come back to change it if it turns out to be wrong. 2. Secret Treasure Ranks, Common-Combat-Extraordinary-Fantasy, Chapter 453, if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3432, Chapter 506, Crazed Border. Chapter 3432, Chapter 506, Crazed Border. Chapter 506. Crazed Border. Has Soul logged out? Did something happen on her end? Shifeng asked, sensing something was amiss when he saw Gentle Snow's expression. Hidden Soul had entered the Void Saint's Legacy Land along with Gentle Snow. However, the two did not end up together after the city battle. Instead, Gentle Snow was swept into a special space, while Hidden Soul had been missing ever since. Just yesterday, Shifeng had deliberately gone offline to meet up with Gentle Snow and check on Hidden Soul's situation at the Star Lake Training Center. Initially, he had thought that Hidden Soul would have a mandatory online period similar to Gentle Snow, but it seemed that Hidden Soul was either busy in God's domain or had a longer mandatory online period, as she did not come offline at the same time as Gentle Snow. There's nothing wrong with Soul herself, Gentle Snow said before pausing. Then, she took a deep breath and whispered, it's just that a concerning problem has taken place in the miniature ancient world. After the city battle, the system required all players in the miniature ancient world to stay online. Moreover, time there had been flowing at an astonishing rate throughout this period. According to Soul, 4 months had already passed in the miniature ancient world, and it has only just returned to normal now. Players are also able to log in and out freely now. 4 months. Shifeng was shocked to hear this. Throughout the many years he played God's Domain, he had only ever heard of players experiencing different time flows after getting trapped in certain special locations. However, he had never heard of an entire world getting sealed and having its time flow accelerated, even if it was only a miniature world. Not to mention, the miniature ancient world's time flow was accelerated to quite a significant extent, experiencing in-game 4 months in only several real-world days. This was truly an astonishing situation. The accelerated time flow wasn't a problem originally. Although the miniature ancient world's various powers remained fiercely competitive even after the world passage was closed, they reached a state of balance, Gentle Snow said. But as soon as the system lifted the seal on the miniature ancient world and the flow of time returned to normal, another world passage opened. The new world passage is very stable and can easily allow Tier 5 players to come and go. Moreover, after our miniature ancient world was unsealed, the location where the world passage opened up changed. It is no longer located in the Starlight Realm's Sea of Giants, but a part of the Void Sea that is very close to several realms. The Void Sea. Shifeng was stunned. Wouldn't that make it a target of contention for numerous realms? The greater God's Domain's various realms were located far apart from one another. Even Tier 6 players would have difficulty traveling between 2 neighboring realms. Not to mention, there were many undeveloped areas and primordial ruins in the Void Sea. Many of the greater God's Domain's discovered divine artifacts were obtained from these undeveloped areas and primordial ruins. Hence, experts at Tier 5 and above would typically head to the Void Sea to further their development. Because of this, the various powers operating in the Void Sea would typically build guild fortresses for their members to teleport to. Not only would this let their members save on travel time, but the various powers could also charge non-member visitors exorbitant entrance fees to generate additional revenue, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The problem was that every guild fortress could only accommodate a limited number of players. Moreover, the materials required to build a guild fortress in the Void Sea were demanding and costly, so the various powers couldn't build as many fortresses as they wanted. However, it was a different story for a miniature world. A miniature world could accommodate many, many more players than a guild fortress. So, now that a miniature world had appeared in the Void Sea, one could easily imagine the turmoil it would cause among the various powers. Gentle Snow's face darkened slightly as she nodded to Shifeng's words. Then, she said, many powers have already entered the miniature ancient world thus far. Not only are these powers frantically seizing the guild towns built by our native powers, but they have also destroyed many of our native powers. Currently, whether it is the Azura Mercenary Alliance or Zero Wing, neither is doing well. During the 2 months Gentle Snow had spent with Scarecrow Fox, she learned how intense and terrifying the competition among the Greater God's Domain's various powers was. It was especially so for struggles involving multiple realms. When going up against the powers of multiple realms, even the Greater God's Domain's upper-ranking hegemonic powers were likely to face destruction, let alone the miniature ancient world's native superpowers. It seems we will have to return to the miniature ancient world as soon as possible, Shifeng said, deciding to push forward some of his plans. If a guild wished to become an immortal kingdom and stand at the Greater God's Domain's apex, the first thing it needed to do was to ensure it had a stable supply of fresh blood. Typically, when the Greater God's Domain's various powers chose to recruit young talents, they would prioritize the geniuses of their homeworld first and foremost. This was because native geniuses were less likely to betray them. It would also be more convenient to nurture them in the real world. Everyone might be tied together in God's domain, but players of different civilizations were situated far apart from one another in the greater world. If a power recruited players originating from the same homeworld, they could be certain that these players operated in the same region as they did in the greater world. However, if a power recruited players from a different homeworld, they wouldn't necessarily be operating in the same sphere of mobile cities. They might not even be operating on the same interstellar continent. This would make managing and nurturing these players a very troublesome affair. The miniature ancient world was their civilization's miniature world. It served as a foundation for Zero Wing to establish a foothold in the Greater God's Domain. If Zero Wing got eliminated from the miniature ancient world, he'd have to start planning for early retirement. Return to the miniature ancient world? Gentle Snow looked at Shifeng with confusion. Can we even do that? Emichem. I have a way for us to go back, Shifeng said in a whisper. But before that, we need to deal with things here. Returning to the miniature ancient world was not a problem for him. The Abyss Workshop certification allowed teleportation between realms. He also had the miniature ancient world's location saved, so he could use the workshop certification to create a world-breaking gate that linked the Eternal Realm and the miniature ancient world. The only problem was that he could only teleport up to 20 players at a time. But before returning, he still needed to obtain the heroic mark first. Otherwise, he'd risk other powers securing the level 155 floor master's first kill before he did, and that was not a risk he could afford to take. While Shifeng and Gentle Snow were having their discussion, everyone in the team suddenly heard the voice of Blaze Eye, one of the team's rangers who had gone to scout ahead. Everyone! I found a mutated floor master. Upon hearing Blaze Eye's words, the eyes of the team's resting members instantly lit up with excitement. Blaze, are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Is it really a mutated floor master? Inkchaline asked in eagerness and doubt. The underground Crystal Palace's floor masters could be regarded as the biggest treasure of the secret land's every floor. And although mutated monsters were considerably stronger than their non-mutated counterparts, the loot they dropped would also be significantly better. I'm sure, Big Sis Chaline, Blaze Eye affirmed. Okay. Send us the coordinates. We'll head over there right away. In the meantime, hurry up and set up a fog barrier. We mustn't let other teams discover the mutated floor master, Inkchaline instructed. Quite a few teams had already arrived on the 4th floor by now. If other teams were to discover the mutated floor master, a battle of epic proportions was bound to ensue. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 34-33, Chapter 507, Mutated Floor Master. Chapter 34-33, Chapter 507, Mutated Floor Master. Chapter 507, Mutated Floor Master. Underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor. In less than 10 minutes, Shifeng, Inkchaline, and the others arrived in the middle of a valley surrounded by a lush forest. Big Sis Chaline, over here. Blaze Eye called out when he saw Inkchaline arriving in the valley with the rest of the team. Then, he reported, I have already set up multiple fog barriers in the area. I have also scouted the surroundings, but I haven't spotted any other players aside from those on our team. Inkchaline scanned the surrounding fog for a moment before nodding. Then, she asked, "Where is the mutated Floor Master?" The fog barrier covered a very large area. Not only did it work to obscure vision, but it also weakened the effects of perception-type skills and spells. Even if assassins and rangers got close to the fog generated by the fog barrier, they would have difficulty identifying the presence of monsters within the fog. It was also unlikely someone would suspect the fog covering the valley was the product of fog barriers, since it was common for large maps to have fog. It was why it was common for players to set up fog barriers in advance when fighting boss monsters out in the wilderness. It's just ahead in the nearby corpse site. That mutated Floor Master's perception is very strong, so I dare not get too close, Blaze-Eye said with lingering fear in his eyes. Big Sis Chaline, be careful later. That mutated Floor Master feels off. Even though I was using Eagle Eye to observe it from over 1,000 yards just now, I felt it noticing me. Yet, it showed no intention to attack me and simply focused on devouring monster corpses. Its perception is that powerful? Inkchaline was a little surprised. It was common for mutated monsters to devour other monsters since they had already shaken off many of the restrictions the main god system imposed on monsters. Meanwhile, the more players and monsters a mutant devoured, the stronger it would become. However, even if a Floor Master had mutated, it was still impressive that it could perceive Blaze-Eye from over 1,000 yards away. Thus far, even the Tier 5 legendary monsters they had encountered on the underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor only had a perception range of up to 300 yards. In comparison, the mutated Floor Master's perception range could be said to have reached the standard of Tier 6 divine monsters already. Subsequently, under Blaze-Eye's guidance, Inkchaline and the others arrived at a place littered with corpses. These corpses covered a radius of over 1,000 yards. The stench of blood in the air was so intense that even the battle-hardened members of Scarecrow Fox couldn't help but feel suffocated. Aside from monster corpses, many player corpses could also be spotted in this area. It was evident that the mutated Floor Master had gone around killing quite a few of the player teams that had arrived on the 4th floor and gathered their corpses here. Not good. When Inkchaline saw the humanoid figure standing in the center of this corpse site, she instinctively shouted, "Retreat! Quickly! Fear! Trembling fear!" At this moment, the emotion of fear was vividly displayed on Inkchaline's face. Unfortunately, before Riverlight and the others could react, a low and cold voice suddenly echoed in everyone's minds. "Not bad. So you did bring more food for me. I should be able to evolve with these additions." The moment this voice appeared in their minds, whether it was Scarecrow Fox's members or Desolate Fury's group of 3, unprecedented fear immediately colored their faces. A special intelligent life form. The Floor Master before them had already evolved into a disaster that could make the entire Greater Gods domain tremble with fear. Before Inkchaline and the others could even scatter and flee, the figure in the middle of the corpse site had already appeared in front of them as if it had been there from the beginning. A human. Gentle Snow was a little stunned as she looked at the exquisite, doll-like beauty standing before their team. Rather than a ferocious monster, what stood before them was a beautiful woman wearing a white one-piece dress. The woman had waist-length silver hair, and the smile she wore on her face was warm and enchanting. At first glance, Gentle Snow failed to sense any danger coming from the woman. "Damn it!" Inkchaline cursed out loud. Unlike Gentle Snow, Inkchaline looked at the woman floating before them with a pale and terrified expression, as if she was not looking at a peerless beauty but a ferocious beast instead. Special intelligent life forms. Such existences were exceedingly rare, even throughout the entire Greater Gods domain. Meanwhile, a representation of what special intelligent life forms could accomplish was the 22 taboos. Mutated Floor Master, Tier, Special Intelligent Life Form, Legendary, Level 163 HP 2 trillion Tier. The mutated Floor Master before them might not have reached the Tier 6 Divine rank, and even her level was only at 163, but she was already an undefeatable existence for Tier 5 players like them. The reason for this was not simply because Tier possessed insurmountable basic attributes. Besides that, she also possessed saint-level control over mana due to her being a special intelligent life form and the ability to steal the skills and spells of the players she devoured. Combined with her computing speed that vastly surpassed that of players, her existence alone could rival an army of magical-class saints. The system really isn't making things easy for me. Shifeng wryly smiled as he looked at the special intelligent lifeform before him. Special intelligent lifeforms were existences that players should do their best to steer clear of in the greater God's domain. Even though Tia was only a newly born special intelligent lifeform, she could already rival dragons of the same tier and level in terms of overall strength. "All of you, become my food," Tia said as she waved a finger around in the air. Suddenly, everyone present experienced a feeling of suffocation, and even Shifeng was no exception. This was because the mana within a 1,000-yard radius had been drawn to form multiple magic arrays of massive size. Tier 5 spell, Dimensional Wind. Over a dozen instances of Dimensional Wind appeared around the team simultaneously, one for every member of the team. In Tia's hands, the triple and quadruple casting methods regarded by players as incredibly challenging were nothing but a joke. Subsequently, over a dozen dimensional blades could be seen flying at every member of the team, each blade being several hundred meters in size. Faced with these devastating dimensional blades, even the highly experienced members of Scarecrow Fox felt despair. After all, Dimensional Wind was originally already a large-scale destruction spell. A Tier 5 Saint-ranked elementalist could, at most, silent cast one instance. Yet, Tia had cast over a dozen instances simultaneously. How were they even supposed to fight such an existence? It seems a big investment is unavoidable. When Shifeng saw the humongous dimensional blades targeting everyone in the team, he stopped withholding his cards and injected 6,000 units of 7 Luminaries crystal into the Feather of Oath, summoning 6 level 162, Tier 5 War Goddesses. Tier 5 War Goddesses. When the 6 War Goddesses appeared, even Desolate Fury, Cross, and La Roja, who had previously seen Shifeng summoning War Goddesses, couldn't help but be stunned. The degree of shock they experienced from seeing the 6 Tier 5 War Goddesses was no less than what they experienced when they first saw the mutated Floor Master. Is this why Abyss Water apologized? When Cheline saw the 6 War Goddesses, she suddenly realized why Abyss Water had so decisively apologized to Shifeng despite being a vice-guild leader of the Scarlet Merchant Alliance. Before Cheline could snap out of her daze, the 6 War Goddesses had already started attacking the approaching dimensional blades using the various weapons they wielded. Boom! In the blink of an eye, every dimensional blade was snuffed out of existence, the collision between the dimensional blades and the War Goddesses' weapons drawing a dark curtain over the valley. At first glance, it looked as if someone had punctured a hole in the sky, the hole measuring over 1,000 meters in radius. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3434, Chapter 508, Magic and Combat Techniques. Chapter 3434, Chapter 508, Magic and Combat Techniques. Chapter 508, Magic and Combat Techniques. Is this the might of the War Goddesses? We're saved. Everyone was shocked and excited by the 6 War Goddesses' performance. Originally, their team stood no chance whatsoever against the mutated Floor Master. This was because a special intelligent lifeform had an overwhelming advantage over players, and this could be seen by how effortlessly Tia had cast over a dozen Tier 5 spells simultaneously. It was simply unthinkable for players to defeat a special intelligent lifeform of the same tier. But now, with the 6 Tier 5 War Goddesses on their side, killing the mutated Floor Master would no longer be a dream. There was a real chance they could accomplish the unthinkable. Don't relax just yet. These War Goddesses can only stay summoned for a limited time. If we can't finish the battle quickly, we will still be doomed, Shifeng said, reminding his excited teammates that they had yet to win the battle. The summoned War Goddesses only had a duration of 3 hours. While the Feather of Oath's War Goddess summoning skill didn't have a cooldown, each War Goddess had a hidden summoning cooldown of 1 natural day. So, even if he had 7 Luminaries crystals to spare, he couldn't summon them limitlessly. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone promptly calmed down. The ability to summon 6 War Goddesses was indeed amazing. But there was no way such an amazing ability would have no restrictions. Otherwise, It'd be too heaven-defying. And although Shifeng did not mention how long the war goddesses could stay summoned specifically, they probably couldn't stay summoned for very long. Meanwhile, it definitely wouldn't be an easy task to deplete Tia's 2 trillion HP within a limited time. They would need to deal a minimum of 40 billion damage every 5 seconds just to overcome the mutated Floor Master's battle recovery. Even if Tia simply stood still and let them bombard her with attacks, killing her would still be a challenge. What do you suggest we do, Guild Leader Black Flame? Enchantment asked via the team chat while keeping her eyes focused on Tia, who didn't look to be in a hurry to take further action. We'll have to heavily injure her. Otherwise, we will just die from exhaustion, Shifeng said as he looked at the mutated Floor Master. The war goddesses will work together to give her a heavy blow, but we must buy time for them. They cannot be disturbed throughout the preparation process. The reason the Feather of Oath was regarded as one of the Goddess of Space's prized possessions was not because of the war goddess's individual combat capabilities. Instead, it was because of a combination gold combat technique the 12 summoned war goddesses could use together. According to rumors, when 12 Tier 6 war goddesses used this combination technique, they could even heavily injure a primordial god. Although Shifeng could only summon 6 Tier 5 war goddesses right now, the combination technique they used should be enough to heavily injure a Tier 5 special intelligent lifeform. So long as Tia was heavily injured, not only would her basic attributes plummet, but she would also lose her battle recovery ability. Coupled with the attacks of the 6 war goddesses, their team would have a real chance of killing Tia. Otherwise, with Tia's HP and their limited time and manpower, it simply wouldn't be possible for them to take down the mutated Floor Master. If it's just guarding the war goddesses for a short time, we can totally do that, Enchantment said very confidently. But for how long do we need to protect them exactly? A little over 10 seconds, Shifeng estimated. During this time, Tia will definitely attack us relentlessly. Just over 10 seconds. Enchantment breathed a sigh of relief. Then, while holding her shield, she said, "Then, I am 100% confident I can protect them. My shield's boundary defense can neutralize all hostile attacks within an area for 20 seconds. I can even tank multiple divine monsters throughout this duration." Okay. Nodding, Shifeng said, "I am bound to be Tia's priority target as the summoner, so I cannot stay near the war goddesses. I will find an opportune moment to have the war goddesses prepare their combination attack, but once they start their preparation, I will have to leave them in your hands." After saying so, Shifeng promptly distanced himself from the war goddesses. Otherwise, Tia could simply focus all her attacks on one location, and the war goddesses would not have any opportunities to prepare their combination attack. "I don't know what you are trying to do, but do you think you can escape from me?" Tia nonchalantly said as she glanced and pointed a finger at Shifeng, who was executing flowing space to leave the battlefield. Suddenly, space and time seemed to have become frozen, and several dozen magic arrays appeared around Shifeng. When Shifeng saw the magic arrays that had appeared around him, he quickly recognized 2 threefold magic arrays, and he couldn't help but curse at the players responsible for feeding the Tier 5 curses Spatial Garden and Time Arc to Tia. Even with his basic attributes reaching the Tier 6 standard, Shifeng still found himself immobilized due to the effects of the 2 triple cast curses, and he could only watch as several dozen Tier 5 offensive spells targeted him. Attack! Shifeng didn't dare to drag things out any longer and immediately called for the war goddesses to start preparing their attack. At the same time, he activated Fluctuating Law, constructing a world barrier around himself that protected him from the bombardment of spells. Following Shifeng's command, the 6 war goddesses gathered together and closed their eyes to meditate, isolating their minds from their surroundings. At first glance, it didn't look like the war goddesses were doing anything. Unfortunately, Tia immediately sensed the danger the war goddesses posed to her and raised one of her hands. Then, everyone on the battlefield lost access to their 5 senses. However, this state lasted for only an instant. Then, once everyone recovered their 5 senses, they saw hundreds of meteorites appearing in the sky. The meteorites were massive, each having a radius of several thousand meters. Moreover, every meteorite was inscribed with divine runes, and their mere presence caused the surrounding space to collapse. Tier 5 curse, Starry Rhapsody. Tia's Starry Rhapsody was stacked more than 10 times, and just its activation depleted the mana in a 10,000-yard radius. Everyone felt suffocated due to the lack of mana around them, and the sight of the descending meteorites instilled an indescribable sense of terror in them. So, this is a special intelligent life form? At this moment, everyone on the battlefield could feel the approach of death. They also came to understand why special intelligent life forms had the potential to grow into existences regarded as taboo by the entire Greater Gods domain. Meanwhile, when Inc. saw the descending meteorites, she instinctively activated her Tier 5 Legacy Berserk skill Hero's Heart, increasing all her basic attributes by 150% and defensive skill effects by 200%. Boundary Defense. Suddenly, a barrier that blocked everything appeared with Inc. at its center, covering a radius of 50 yards. Boom! 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 A moment later, the descending meteorites began bombarding Inc.'s boundary defense one after another, the resulting shockwaves turning the entire battlefield into a dark void and sending tremors across the underground Crystal Palace's 4th floor. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,